One day, a call for participants is announced for a new reality show where 8 people must fight for survival on an island. The selection process is very strict, and many hopefuls drop out during the initial stages because they are not prepared for such challenges. Eventually, the competition ends. The participants are informed of the survival rules. They must take care of themselves, conserve warmth, avoid injuries, and provide food for themselves. So on the island of Solom, the host greets the participants and suggests they applaud for making it past the preliminary stage. The last person to leave this patch of land will be the winner. Anyone who decides to withdraw from the competition just needs to use the button on their radio or find an evacuation point. Everything will begin when people spread out and end up in their designated locations. The host counts down and starts the game. The first scene features a woman trying to start a fire using makeshift tools. She complains about the condition since everything around is wet and modern people don't know how to use old methods, but she has no choice and continues her task. The second participant speaks to the camera, stating that he needs to find shelter on the island. He wanders around for a while and finds a wonderful place where sheer cliffs protect against the wind. It's almost a 5-star hotel where he will set up camp. The man collects branches to arrange his new dwelling and enjoys the beauty of the surrounding nature. Meanwhile, an unidentified object circles high above the earth. On the island, each participant explores the area, hoping to settle in comfortably. Everything around them is only causing excitement so far. One of the participants, Carol, even expresses that she feels at home here. It now seems to her that she has been preparing her whole life to be here. In the meantime, we see footage of Earth, which is empty and devastated. A humanoid alien walks across the planet as if getting to know it. On the island, Paul examines the surroundings. He appears to be much more serious than the others, fully aware of the complexity of the challenges ahead. The first thing he does is throw his radio into the sea, cutting off his chance of returning to civilization. Meanwhile, Carol continues her exploration and suddenly finds a blooming hydrangea. She marvels at the flowers and even strokes one of them, but when she moves away from the plant, the flower flickers as if it is a hologram. Liam is busy preparing his bow and setting off for a hunt. The alien continues to survey the ruined, desolate planet. Night falls. Emma records her first video. She hasn't eaten all day while building a shelter from a piece of plastic she brought with her. She will think about food tomorrow. Right now, she would love to get some sleep. However, the sounds on the island are not very conducive to that. Finally, the sun rises. Dai greets the dawn on the shore, welcoming it in a Buddhist manner. He is happy to be alone with nature. Completely undressed, he heads toward the water. Meanwhile, Paul destroys his camera and leaves it on the shore. But as he walks away, the camera's fragments begin to flicker and vanish without a trace. The first participant wakes up in her makeshift shelter and immediately records a video, lamenting that she couldn't start a fire at first. However, her persistence has paid off, and she has found snails. So she is glad she brought a pot with her because today she will have snail soup. Unexpectedly, she slips on a rock and falls. Later, she records another video. She has broken her leg on the second day on the island and will have to drop out of the game. The woman says goodbye to her viewers and presses the button. Suddenly, she starts flickering and then falls, dying. Meanwhile, Scott is preparing a fishing net when Liam with his bow appears on the shore. The man greets him rather warmly, although he thought participants weren't supposed to see each other. Then Liam raises his bow. Realizing he's about to be shot at, Scott runs away. The archer chases him into the forest, periodically shooting arrows at his back. Soon, Scott manages to hide from the deranged participant. Meanwhile, Dai informs the viewers that he is building a raft for fishing. In his real life, he works as a bailiff and intends to win. Carol shares her luck with the viewers. She couldn't find shelter, but everything was resolved when Paul, who had trouble with his camera, came to help. He offered to team up. At that moment, the man hears strange noises and asks Carol to hide behind a wall. He picks up a stick and hits Scott, who has emerged from behind a rock, but fortunately, not too hard. Scott is outraged and talks about an attack by a lunatic with a bow. Paul noticeably tenses up and starts asking questions. Then he admits he was expecting this and tells Carol to get ready. The people don't understand how he could have anticipated the behavior of an unknown participant, but Paul doesn't answer and just leaves. Meanwhile, Emma tries to find food but discovers the body of the deceased woman. Frightened, she runs back to her shelter. At night, Carol tries to understand why Liam chased Scott, as killing him live seems at least foolish. The woman admits she has always been strange and liked talking to objects. Her first friend was a weed. Naturally, other children didn't understand and didn't like her. A doctor said it was a gift. In the morning, Carol wakes up from a nightmare where she was in some strange place, but it's still the same forest around her. Scott greets her when a scream is heard, and Paul appears, telling them to run. At that moment, an arrow embeds itself in a tree. 3 people run into the forest while Liam chases them, occasionally shooting arrows. However, the people manage to escape. They reach the shore where they meet Di. Hearing about the attack, he is ready to call for rescue, but Paul says that would be equivalent to admitting defeat. He suggests climbing higher to get a better view. The people head to the mountains. Suddenly, Carol admits that Di also raises suspicions with his accent. Soon, the group finds Emma rummaging through the backpack of the deceased woman. Seeing them, she is ready to run, but they convince her of their peaceful intentions. She then cries and admits she is very scared because she felt someone was watching her. Di again suggests using the radio. But at that moment, Scott finds the deceased woman's radio and plays her last message, which reveals that after pressing the button, she simply died. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, another participant dies from a sharpened stake. The next morning, Carol wakes up before anyone else and, after looking around, finds astonishingly beautiful plants. Sitting in front of them, she tells them about an incredible place somewhere out there. Then Liam approaches her and admits he needs the truth because the beauty is gone. He is a judge and doesn't want to kill her or anyone else, but he must signal those who kill. They didn't help people, so he has to act. Aiming at the woman, he leads her to the others, but the men attack him. A fight begins in which Liam pushes Carol hard and she falls, hitting her head on a rock. The woman regains consciousness in an unfamiliar room and sees a strange, transparent sphere in her hand. On the shore, the alien stands with glowing blue eyes and looks at the ocean with delight. But as if hearing something, it starts to flicker and disappears. Meanwhile, Carol wanders through a space resembling an office. Suddenly, a screen turns on in front of her, and a man on camera talks about how if someone is watching the video, it means they are the last one on the station, and he is either dead or hiding in a bunker while there are supplies of oxygen and food. He strongly asks others not to go outside and hopes that everything will be forgotten. At this point, Carol comes to her senses and finds herself being carried on a stretcher. She admits that something is happening to her, but Paul reassures her, and then they see the second participant killed by a wooden stake. Soon they reach the seashore, and the men admit they took care of the body. Now they need to secure themselves. Meanwhile, Liam regains consciousness in some pit and climbs out. Carol tries to get answers from Paul. She realizes that Liam needed him the most. Now she is visited by visions of some institution or laboratory. Paul then admits that life on Earth has ended because people poisoned the environment, started a nuclear war, and used up all natural resources. The game on the island is humanity's chance for survival. He was a radio astronomer when he received a message from aliens promising to come soon to save the best. Everything around is a projection in her mind, and her body is currently at the station for selection. Carol doesn't believe this and comes to her senses in the same institution. An alien calls out to her, calling her Solum, which means special or unique. He is a collector created in her mind to facilitate understanding, and he asks to see her sphere. The woman hands over the object, and the alien seems to bathe in its energy. Carol finds herself in some white space and demands answers. The alien admits that everything around is made for the meeting. He is a program created for first contact. For years, humans sent messages to the stars, and they arrived, but they cannot save everyone. Carol reaches for the sphere and suddenly sees burning forests, melting glaciers, catastrophes and calamities, and dying people, whom rulers convinced of their safety until the end. Then Carol comes to her senses by the campfire. Paul announces that they are supposedly in an alien laboratory, but they don't believe this and begin to argue with him. Paul explains that aliens sent spheres all over the world to conduct selection and choose the most worthy. He and his friend Liam learned to deceive the spheres, and Carol came up with a new way of communication because she is special. In the morning, people spot Liam and flee. Paul asks Carol to hide on the highest peak because only one will survive. Then he suddenly admits he was her husband. The woman tells the others to hurry to the mountain, but a wooden stake flies from the forest and kills Di. Liam appears, but Paul stops him with his own bow. Liam asks them to understand that the aliens never intended to save them, and he charges at Paul. The men fight, and Liam, who intends to win the game and bring a bomb to the alien ship, emerges victorious. Carol screams in horror, but Scott reminds her that her husband sacrificed himself. They continue running. However, Emma twists her ankle, and Scott suggests setting a trap. Liam sees the woman and is told she was left behind due to her ankle. Then Scott and Carol attack Liam, but he manages to grab and kill Emma. However, Scott wounds Liam. He sends Carol to the peak where the game's exit is, while he stays behind to guard the defeated enemy. Scott watches as Emma's body flickers and realizes that everything Liam said is true. He reminds her that only one will win and survive. He asks to be killed because he cannot surrender. Scott raises his spear, Meanwhile, Carol reaches the summit, and Scott presses the radio button. Immediately, a sphere appears before Carol, and the eyes of all the deceased participants begin to flicker strangely. Carol reaches out and sees all the participants lying deep in the forest, but the simulation begins to close, and eventually, the island disappears. The woman finds herself on the floor of the laboratory with the sphere in her hand. In front of her are the bodies of the participants whom she says goodbye to. Then, following the alien, she steps outside. On her head is a protective helmet, and ahead is an alien ship where Carol boards and sees 5 unknown people who also became winners in the game and passed the alien selection. Together with her, they now look at the destroyed Earth.